Good day, everyone. In this afternoon, we're going to talk about the sex and senses. So in this topic, we're going to talk about the human affect the senses and sexuality. Did you know that our primary senses contribute to our experience of human sexuality? You will learn more of that as we go through in our discussion for today. So the learning outcomes for today's topic is to discuss the human senses in the context of sexual response and show appreciation of how sensorium contributes to our experience of human sexuality. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, when we were children, we were taught that there are 5 bodily organs which correspond to our primary senses that we use to explore and experience the world around us. Our eyes enables the sense of sight so that we'll be able to see visual stimuli like color, shape, and size in our environment. Our nose enables the sense of smell so that we'll be able to experience scents. Our ears allow us sense of hearing so that we'll be able to experience sounds of varying tones, pitches, and volumes. Our tongue is covered with taste buds that allows us the sense of taste so that we'll be able to experience the taste like saltiness, sweetness, and bitterness of our food and other object we put in our mouth. Then, we have sensory reception in our skin, muscles, and joints which allows us the sense of touch, feeling so that we'll be able to have tactile experience, heat or absence, various textures, various physical and pressures. So, these 5 senses comprise our sensorium, or the totality of our sensory experiences and perception. While we receive information from our environment through the senses, our brain has the ability to organize and interpret these numerous stimuli into meaningful ideas that are useful for our choices or behavior. So for example, if imong mata nakakita nga inahulog nga ballpen gikan sa lamisa, so imong brain mo function siya nga suguon ang imong kamot para punitunto nga ballpen o ibalik sa lamisa. So now let us talk about the human affect and the senses. So interestingly, while human beings are hailed as rational beings who are constantly making choices and are behaving through a set of rational choices made from higher order thinking like evaluating and judging, is hypothesized that our affect, like emotions and feelings, actually play a major role in our behaviors. To relate to the affective primacy hypothesis of Zhang of 1980, he claimed that cognitive processing or the higher order thinking plays a lesser role compared to our emotional responses in eliciting behavior. By virtue of his hypothesis, emotions take precedence primarily because these are only processed and modulated by the limbic system. So what is the limbic system? Limbic system is the emotional part of our brain which is more primitive compared to the ones responsible for higher order thinking. So, this is where the sensorium and human affect meets. Here, it will help us to think of a particular case. Now, let's imagine that we are walking in the forest with our friends when all of a sudden, a venomous snake dropped down in front of you. How will you respond to the situation like this? As part of our mechanisms for evolution, humans like us have 3 primary emotional responses, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. A fight response is when we face adverse or dangerous stimuli squarely. This would mean grabbing the nearest solid object in the environment and throw it to the snake to make the snake away. A flight response is when we away from the adverse or dangerous stimuli. This would mean running away from the place and finding a new route where the snake cannot find you. A freeze response, on the other hand, is when we are startled and unable to make choices, thus are unable to move. Sometimes, the first response can also be used to buy time so that you can calculate the advantages and disadvantages of your choice. Either you shall fight the snake or fly away from the scene. But in real life experience, sa ato na situation, kay kasagaran mo freeze jud ta kay atong una-una mang good kung maliyok noon ka kay basin tukbo na noon ka sa snake. So, much better kung mo freeze na lang ka para walay mahitabo. Dayon, kasagaran pud sa uban kay wag ga freeze kay manawag or mama o magkalisod man gani kay mag-just-colored na dira. Dayon, pero kung tan-aw nimo nga padulong na nimo ang snake kay mo freeze pa ka, so mudagan jud ka. So much for that. So inana ta mo respond sa mga stimuli nga grabe kaayo ang situation. So to continue, in all three basic emotional responses, there is a requirement. So we should be able to sense the environment, organize the stimuli we receive, and interpret the stimuli so we can make a choice and corresponding action. We will not be able to arrive at the behavior if not through our senses. These make our sensorium a necessary component of the emotional response arc. So to end my topic, I will be asking you a question. Do you agree that our sensorium considered as a necessary component if individuals do or acquire sexual activities? If yes, you are ready for the next topic, which is the sex and senses.
Thank you for that, Mai. So now, let us go on to senses and sexuality. First, let us define separately what is senses and what is sexuality. Senses are specialized function or mechanism, as mentioned by Mai. This composes sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch by which an animal receives and responds to external or internal stimuli. Whereas sexuality is about your sexual feelings, thoughts, attractions, and behaviors towards other people. My partner, Mai, already provided us an overview on how humans affect the sensorium and how the brain's limbic system coordinate. So, now we are ready to discuss how the various senses play in the human sexual response. First on the list is the visual experience. We all know that humans, us, are very visual people, right? Our society highly rely on visual to co-create meaning and convey information. So how can it affect our sexual response? Based on the study of Roop and Dwalin, they found out that men respond more to visual sexual stimuli and tend to be influenced by the sex of the actor in sexual scenario. So it says here that boys tend to respond more on what they see visually, like the physical look of the person. If sexy ba or guwapa or pasok sa ilang personal standard. Women, on the other hand, tend to pay more attention to contextual and non-sexual cues than men. Although yes, responsive sa sila sexual context, but they are much more influenced by the nature of relationship they have with another person. Like if that person is someone they know or they can trust. Next is olfactory experience, or the sense of smell. Although our olfaction is in lesser level than the other animals, this one also plays a vital role on affecting our sexual response. Scientists have tried to explain how human olfaction influences sexuality. They identified it through possibilities. First, through what is referred to as signature odor. It is the unique way that each individual smells, which is associated with the major histocompatibility complex, a set of proteins signaling our immune system the presence of foreign substance. Have you experienced recognizing someone just through their scent? It says here that our signature odor may influence our sexual response. Do you agree, guys? The second one is through what is referred to as pheromones. It is the substance putatively excreted by our glands which signals mood and affects social behaviors. So, what do scientists think human pheromones do? First is it thought to act as attractants of the opposite sex, repellents of the same sex, stabilizer of mother-infant bond, and modulator of menstrual cycle. Third one is the tactile experience. This is the sense of touch. Touch is observed to be an element of intimacy. Our body is covered in skin, often referred to as the largest bodily organ. Hence, in social interactions, particularly intimate ones, touch holds meaning. There are only people who we allow to touch us. There are only parts of our body that we allow other people to touch, right? So there are touch elements. The first one is the thermal elements. This pertains to the warmness or coldness of the object we were touching. The second one is the vibrational element. This talks about the pressure of the object we are touching, if it's strong or weak. And the last one, which we were going to discuss much deeper, is the tactile element. This pertains to the experience relative to the object being felt, like if it's rough or smooth. There are different thresholds of tactile experience. These are primary and secondary erogenous area. Primary erogenous zone are areas that are very sensitive to touch, like the mouth, the anus, the genitals, and the nipples. Secondary erogenous zone are sensitive areas as well, but they are only supportive of the primary zone in eliciting response. These areas include the back, cheek, neck, and buttocks. So when we touch, our body produces a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is referred to as the love hormone because it is believed that it influences tribal behaviors and maternal bonding. In intimate relationship, touch is suggested to be one of the love languages. A person whose love language is touch tend to give and receive tactile stimulation to and from others through holding, hugging, and other forms of physical connections. The last one is auditory experience. Social interactions are not only visual, but are also auditory processes. Our human language often have a verbal counterpart to the written language. In fact, historically, much of our culture passed on through oral traditions, even before the writing system was developed. Sexual activities are also a verbal communication process. Sounds give additional context to sexual situations. For instance, in sexual interactions, couple may give verbal erotic encouraging words. These are words that trigger sexual response, or it may be verbal expression of affections. These are the words that manifest feelings such as I love you, I miss you. A survey of popular music will show that love and sex are among the common themes of songs nowadays. These only emphasize the value of sound in human sexuality. So that's all for sharing part. Thank you for listening. It's time for you guys to share naman. But before that, let me share to you a quote from Swami Parthasarathi. It is to do not lose the treasure of yourself for the pleasure of the senses. That's all. Hope you learned something. Thank you. Goodbye.